We're back with more Inside the Green Room with Danny Green. I'm Harrison Sanford, and I am overjoyed to have Doris Burke with us. I have to say, when I listen to a game or watch the game on TV rather yet, when I know Doris is making the call, I'm just like, yeah. You know, it's a little fist pump that you give Danny. I don't know how much you get to watch basketball and Doris.
Oh, I get to watch plenty, man.
Danny doesn't even watch basketball. He just likes to watch movies when he's home. But I would hope that when he does watch a basketball game, he's overjoyed or happy when you're on the call.
Well, I appreciate that because I've always thought as an announcer, the last thing I want is to be one of those people where you hear the voice and you go, I think I'm going to change the channel tonight. I don't want to watch that.
There are a couple guys where I'm listening to, I'm like, oh God, this guy is the worst. But yes, when we do hear you, I'm overjoyed as well to have you on the pod. Thank you for making time. But when I do hear you, I listen in carefully because I know you guys got some good gems and some, as of late, some funny stuff. You guys are going back and forth with some of the guys on the panel there. So it's been great. But I didn't know this about you. You grew up as a New York, New Jersey kid. I did not know that. So to have a fellow New Yorker on the pod is great as well. You made history as the first woman to become a network full-time analyst in 2017. And now you're making history again as the first woman to call the NBA Finals games on the radio. First and foremost, congratulations on the new gig. But what does this opportunity mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. It's been a process since 1990 when I entered the business, and I'm hoping, frankly, I've been really lucky. I entered the business at a point in which coverage of women's college basketball was growing, and so, I got in at the early stages of sort of television coverage and had some happy accidents occur to get me involved with men's college basketball and then eventually the NBA. And I never intended on this journey or this path. I know that a lot of my success is about the timing of my entry into the business. And I know that I've been fortunate to be the first woman, but I know that there are so many qualified women that could do what I do. So I'm really thankful, and I'm hoping that somehow, if it's possible, I've made their path easier. But I look at someone like Candace Parker when she joins TNT recently, and what I love about this new generation of young women, like the basketball, you knew Candace would have it. She's such a great player. There's great instinct and feel and just great, she's fun to watch. But for me, Danny, this next generation of women enters the business with this poise and confidence on camera that I didn't possess at that age. And so I sort of stand in awe of these women who are coming up around me. And it gives me incredible joy to see them succeed.
Well, you definitely paved the way and set the standard. And you made it easier. You definitely made it easier for them. And I'm sure a lot of them watch you like I have watched Stuart Scott in my younger days. Rest in peace to him. But he's the guy I looked up to, and all the other guys, Kenny Smith, a lot of Carolina guys, which kind of made me kind of go into that field college-wise or school-wise and kind of want to study into it a little bit. And when I'm done, hopefully, maybe get into that field as a job, as a career. But yeah, it's been amazing to watch over the years of so many women coming, through the business. And now, so I've been talking to Taylor Rooks, Morgan Mitchell. So I'm doing some interviews with a lot of them around the bubble here. So it's been amazing to see, more and more women come and get into the business.
Yeah, and you know what, Danny? Here's what I know unequivocally, and that those women that you talk about, Taylor in particular, she pops off the screen. And one of the things that's really been powerful in my career and will be powerful in their career, and I've said this often, if circumstances are going to change for women, it will require the participation of men. You could say the same about social justice, right? If circumstances are going to change for Black people in this country, it's going to require the participation of everyone. And it's the one thing I would say is I feel like these women have a strength of character and confidence that maybe 20 years ago, with the advent of social media, or I don't even know when social media became a thing. But one thing I think is powerful, and you players may not be aware of it, but how you respond to us and how you react to us is quite powerful to the casual viewer. because the objections to me early in my career, to me doing men's college basketball and the NBA, came from outside of the game. The players and the coaching staffs, whether I go back to Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, all the Big East coaches I've always dealt with, and then, you know, the Steve Kerrs, Greg Popovich's, et cetera, like their acceptance of me has been a soft landing spot. And I just did another interview where I told this reporter, I said, if it had not been for their reaction to me, their acceptance of me, their willingness to just engage me about the game and let that be the basis and the sounding board of everything we did, I'm not sure I would have had the strength of character to endure some of the objections to me all those years ago. So please know, as you navigate that, it's powerful.
No, for sure. I
have to shout out Roz too. I forgot. I have to shout out Roz. You know, for another New Yorker, I have to shout out Roz. Rose Gold. She's been doing an amazing job as well. So I can't forget to not mention her name. But yeah,
she shadowed me once.
Yeah,
I covered her at Stanford, and I'll tell you what. You know, I have a lot of women say, "I want to do this, I want to do that." Roz Goldon Moody flew from Stanford to Atlanta for an East Coast game to shadow me at an NBA game. That girl's serious about what she does.
She's a worker, man. She's a worker. They all are. So very commendable things that they've done in this business.
No, you guys bring up a good point. Great discussion there. And, you know, as somebody who didn't play basketball but gets to cover the Lakers, and obviously last year covering the Raptors, and times that I've had in Ohio covering the Cavs, I am excited to see more and more women covering the sport as well, in addition to women not just who played basketball, but women who are kind of just like me as a man who didn't play but still has the ability as a journalist to cover the sport. So excited to see the journalism field continue to grow, whether it's former athletes or just people who love the game and love to cover it and tell stories. But with that being said, why don't we just talk some basketball a little bit? Why don't we? The Nuggets, the Nuggets and Lakers matchup. I'll let Danny kind of pass on this one, obviously, because Danny's still very much a professional, or if you interview Danny, you really can't get too much out of him. So I'm not even going to try here.
Yeah, you don't get any answers. I'll give you a breakdown, but you won't get any predictions or any answers. I just give you vague and non-specific things without giving away the game plan. He tries to get the game plan. I'm not going to give you the game plan. So.
It never happens. It never happens. But Doris, what's your take on this Western Conference Finals?
Well, I would just simply concur 100%. I don't like it when people ask me to predict. There's a reason we cover the games. It's oftentimes unexpected. And I guess as I watched, what Denver did in both the Utah Jazz series and then against the Clippers, if you had asked me for some descriptors of the Denver Nuggets coming to Orlando, the descriptors I would not have used were probably gritty and tough. And I think Danny, having been a part of multiple teams' championship runs, knows the kind of grit and perseverance and navigating the ups and downs of series and not overreacting to success or failure. And having been a part of that series a year ago where they lost to Portland in the finals, and watching Jamal Murray have to be taken out of the game because, Portland was taking their guards and inverting them and beating Jamal Murray up on the post. And then to see the pride that young man took in his game, to say, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be removed from a game because I'm the sieve. I just feel like there's been incredible progress from this team. Like, we knew how good they were offensively. We knew that down the stretch of games, they were going to the Murray-Jokic two-man game and all the different angles of, the handoffs and the screens, and sometimes Jamal screening for Nikola. So I touched Jamal, like Jokic. I had said to somebody, and it's one of the guys who covers the Denver Nuggets. Might have been Adam Modis or something, but I remember saying to him, Jokic seems completely unimpressed by the NBA lifestyle. And he said, not only is he unimpressed, he's uninterested. Like, I don't even think he knows what it is. Like, there's just this sort of, I don't know, just innocent joyfulness in the game. And maybe because he comes from another country, I don't know. I'm impressed by their depth. I'm impressed by their toughness. But they've got a monster challenge. Like, you know, you're talking about LeBron James, and I can't ignore the history of what I've watched over the last decade plus of LeBron James just, you know, walking into Boston in an absolute must-win situation. You know what it's like, Danny, to play in Boston. If it's okay, can I throw something back at you that's not
Of course.
strategy related, but that has to do with your teammate related? Like, you know, you've competed against him, now you're playing alongside of him. Like, what's the thing that stands out sort of to you about LeBron that maybe somebody who's not a teammate, you know, that strikes you?
To me, just how he's been so consistent for 17 years is unbelievable. That was year 11 for me, and I know a lot of guys who've done it for less and half the time are uninterested. But the level he takes it to another notch that he goes to in a playoff where he takes no plays off. You know, during the regular season, you might see him not miss a rotation or take a playoff. Like, oh, he could have blocked that, but he's saving his legs. He's not doing that in the playoffs. He's going for every basketball he can. He's going to block every shot. He's going to get every steal. He's going to rotate, and offensively, he's not taking any breaks on defense. So to see him locked in and his memory of knowing each play and each breakdown and who needs to be where is unbelievable. So the fact that he's doing it year 17, which a lot of guys – half that time, year 7, 8 years in, you know, they're disinterested and they lose the love of the game. But to see him take it to that level and be that focused and locked in throughout every game throughout the playoffs, and he usually takes that stretch toward the end of the season too. But in big games and in playoffs, you know, no matter who the opponent is, and he's locked in and said, this task ahead, this team is serious, and we respect them. They're very good. We're impressed by their resiliency. They've just been very good at what they've done and how they've come back and how persistent they've been, and just their toughness, like you said, their grit. This is a serious team. They're very good and young, and they get up and down, and we have to be very smart and take this serious and be very focused for, you know, the whole time period that every game that we step on the floor with them.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, one other question for you, because it's just so fascinating to me, and because of where I am in the bubble, I don't have direct access to you guys to be asking these kinds of questions, but you know, as it relates to particular moments that could occur in a series, you know, there's the moment where Paul Millsap and, you know, Mr. Morris come together, and it's highly intense. And is it possible? And there are so many moments, little, small, big, whatever, a million, right? Like, you know, think about the game-saving block of Bam last night that was so outrageously good. But like a moment like that, for fans and even for media, you know, like, how significant could a moment like that be to changing the fundamental feel, even temporarily, that leads to longer stretches of success? Like, how big a deal could a play like that be in a series?
Huge. That could set the tone for the rest of that game, and it could change a player's mindset and the opposing team's mindset for that series. Especially, it's a little different now, so without fans. And I think that's one of the things that dictates and changes some of the momentum of how things go in this bubble. But a play like that, so just certain guys taking a stand or putting their foot down and taking a step up or showing their edge and grit, you know, puts the whole team in that type of mode. And you know what? Some guys are saying, we're not taking no crap tonight. You know, this is where we at, and this guy's setting the tone. And that could change the whole momentum, the whole mindset of a team or a series within that moment. So it's huge. And it'd be interesting to see, like, how different it would be, obviously, with fans, but now how different it is without fans. You're seeing some of the downfalls and disadvantages. There really is no home court advantage, and the home teams or the higher seeds don't really have that advantage, because even though you have the background virtual noise at your home crowd, the opposing team doesn't hear that. It doesn't really sway the momentum like that. You wouldn't see Milwaukee losing their first 2 games at home, you know, in that type of scenario. Clips the same. You know, if they're playing one of those games at home, especially in a game 7 at home, most times that home team doesn't lose a game 7. So that type of thing can determine or, you know, sway instead of a whole game, a whole series.
Great point.
Yeah, and Danny, I wanted to continue with that point. So Doris, as somebody who's watching the games there in the bubble, have you seen, and Danny, if you could follow up on this as well, have you seen the impact of being in the bubble, being in this somewhat isolation, impact the veracity which players would play with, intensity? And obviously I don't want you to name guys or name teams, but have you been able to pinpoint, well, this guy normally doesn't act like this or perform like this, or his mannerisms aren't the same as it would be if there was a crowd there, and when it comes to morale and continuing to fight, whether a team might be down?
This is a difficult question for me to answer, Harrison, and I can only speak to this from the broadcasting position. So I will really be fascinated by Danny's answer here. I'm going to tell you that at my level, I am about 75 feet off the floor with an inch of plexiglass between me and the vision of the floor. And one of the things that helps me as a broadcaster when I sit courtside is the energy of these players. I am afforded a greater view of interactions between teammates and team members and coaching staffs, how the feel of the game is between players from opposite teams. I have less of a sense of that now. As a broadcaster, I would tell you unequivocally, I am taking a longer beat than I might normally. And the viewer won't feel that necessarily. It might be a 4 or 5 second pause for me, but it's longer than I would normally. And so one of the things I feel like I'm missing, and I am in no way, shape, or form complaining, because when I sit in my hotel room and I watch these games as a fan, I lose myself in the game, and I feel like the NBA's presentation has been so good. And I've talked to friends who are NBA fans who are back home in their respective cities, and they're getting immersed and lost in the game. So I'm not picking up on some cues that really help me in the course of a telecast. Hopefully the viewer hasn't suffered as a result of that. But Danny, I am curious from your perspective, are you feeling this impacting people in different ways? And is it really based on an individual and maybe, their personality or their character or what they feed off of or don't? Because this is fascinating to me.
Definitely. I think it affects guys individually. And some teams are just, they play better behind their crowd, certain cities, like a Utah. So that 3-1 series, I think if Utah's at home playing in front of their crowd, I don't think they give up that lead. And just certain individuals, science, there's certain scientific, I guess, whatever surveys that have shown that you perform better, or if you've practiced and done something over and over, you perform better when there's an audience usually. So some guys are, they're just better players with a crowd behind them. Some guys just have more adrenaline, and some guys, even if you're in a funk or in a slump, the crowd will help you get out of that slump. But when you don't have that, it's tougher. So I've seen a lot of guys be affected by it. I've seen guys, some of them not be affected by it. Some guys are just able to just hoop and play like it's, but you're so used to playing in front of a crowd or having that behind you, that adrenaline, help give you extra boost in your legs, whatever speed, jumping or shooting. You don't have that now. And especially when you make a good play, they're usually cheering behind. Now you just have your bench and yourself, trying to get yourselves going and, it's your individual self riled up. It's a lot different. So I have seen some guys affected by it. It is a different type of atmosphere. It's a different type of scenario situation, but have to adapt and adjust. And I think after a couple of weeks, you kind of get used to it, but it's still something that is, going to be weird for us until, we get back to having fans behind us again.
I think about the glitz of being a Laker and, being at Staples and sort of, the celebrity sideline and the feel in the building. And what I've told people, something that I miss is I've always found that when you walk into an NBA arena, if it's a big game in the regular season, but certainly in the playoffs, there is an air and energy and atmosphere that I feel like sometimes you could almost reach out and touch it. It's almost tangible, that tension in the air and the level of intensity once that ball is tipped. And so that is distinctly different. And, I often wonder about the rookies, like think about Tyler Hero and the couple of threes he makes late against Boston. And now that kid is fearless. And I feel like from an innate personality, he might be a guy who's going to relish that opportunity on the road, maybe more than at Miami Airlines Arena. But that said, you got to watch it to believe it. You got to see the delivery to believe it. But it is unusual. And but any idea that Harrison and Danny, that this championship would somehow be less, I think it is different, unequivocally. It is different, but it will be hard and it will be earned.
For sure. And you alluded to that Miami and Boston matchup. And Doris, I feel as if you have somewhat sway, you're a mover, and you got some influence. I saw a tweet the other day, and I really wanted this to kind of happen because it is a bubble season. Things are all brand new. I really would have loved to see maybe a round robin between the Raptors, Celtics, and the Heat, as opposed to the traditional best of seven, because the basketball that was being played between the Raptors and the Celtics was so much fun. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
But if you could bring that up, it was a bubble season. Who knows? But really, though, can you give us your evaluation of the Celtics and the Heat series? Obviously, you alluded to Tyler Hero playing well as a rookie. Obviously, with no fans, it might help him. How do you evaluate that series, and what should people be looking out for when they're trying to make their own predictions?
Yeah, I expected that to be long and hard fought. I mean, these two teams have really stood out on the defensive end. They're hard playing. They're smart. They're second and third, respectively, in loose balls recovered. So, like, every little piece of it, and it's the same for every team at this point, every little piece of real estate is so hotly contested. You go into it thinking naturally there are four legitimate scorers on Boston. What stood out to me last night are two things about that game. The Miami Heat bullied Boston in the paint, absolutely bullied them, doubled up the number at some point. I think it was 48-26. And Jimmy Butler, while he has shot the three well here, he's basically said, I'm coming into the paint and I'm going to score, or I'm going to get free throws. And he did it last night, decisively against the guy who is the number one effective field goal percentage against here, and that's been Jason Tatum. Like, Jason has become a legit two-way force. And I just don't think, Harrison and Danny, I'd love your take on this. I am watching Kemba Walker, who normally in pick and roll is elite, and he gets into that pull-up three game off pick and roll action so quickly, or he's using that cross or that elite break, stop, start, go to get by people, and I didn't see either. And so without Hayward for however long you're without him, you're not going to be able to survive, sort of that performance from Kemba. Am I crazy?
No, you're 100% correct. And that I said they go as far as Kemba goes. And I think that Toronto series went longer because of Kemba's, I wouldn't say inconsistency, but the certain games that he didn't play as well as people expected him to. So usually attack the bigs, usually attacks the slow-footed bigs, whether it's Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka, but now instead of him even attacking some of their bigs, but Bam is very athletic and they have guys that can switch down the line, but still him being more aggressive, even if he's not making shots, but him being more aggressive opens up the floor for them more. And so Gordon and Marcus Smart is an X factor for them right now, but it is at a very high level playing on both ends of the floor. Two teams very well coached, and it's going to be a 7-game series, I think. But yeah, it would be different. That it would be very interesting to see how some of those younger guys would play in front of the road crowds. Some of them might live in the moment. Some of them might stiffen. You don't know, but I think Boston might have a little bit of an edge with the experience. Maybe not so much more, just a couple years, because Miami do have 3 rookies that they play with Nunn, Hero, and Duncan Robinson. But those guys have been playing well. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's a 7-game series, especially with the way the two coaches have been playing this chess match. But Boston goes as far as Kemba goes, and if Kemba starts playing his normal self, or even a step above how he's been in the past on big stages, I think Boston will get the edge.
That's appreciate that breakdown. I still didn't get a prediction from either of you, but I guess I wasn't going to get that anyway.
Not for me. So, Doris, you've broke it down to us how you've been a front row seat at the actions of the NBA players, and also a front row seat of keeping the spotlight on racial tension in the U.S. What recommendations would you make to guys leaving the bubble as they go home to their respective cities, and guys that are still competing here for a championship?
Well, first of all, I'm going to just say that I have such respect and admiration for all of these NBA players who have come down here, because I feel like that was a moral dilemma for many of you about what is the right thing, what is the most impactful thing for us to do. And I'm just going to be really honest with you here and say, I don't know what it is to be Black in America. I have since 2016 working on NBA Countdown with Avery Johnson and Jalen Rose. and then with Chauncey Billups, listened to some things in the course of that last presidential election that had I not been working with Black people, I would have been unaware of. And it triggered this path of some reading. So, Michael Eric Dyson's book, Stamped from the Beginning. I just downloaded White Fragility. So I will tell you, I'm in the process of sort of educating myself, Danny. And I had some trepidation as it relates to this. I knew my primary partner would be Mark Jones here. And forgive me, I'll circle back to what you asked me. But I'm just going to share sort of what it was like for me here as it relates to that. Mark Jones, over 20 years, my primary partner, has become a friend. I know Sarah, his wife. I know his 3 children. And so we are beyond colleagues. We've become friends over 20 years. And Mark had spoken on some conference calls and shared some stories that were incredibly difficult for him to share and so obviously painful. And as a broadcaster, I came down here with the thought that there were 3 things that were important. First and foremost, as it always is the priority is to cover the NBA game directly in front of us and to share the stories of those players, to try to bring the viewer as close to what we are fortunate enough to be covering. The second is social justice aspect, which at one point put into the minds of you players whether or not to come. And once you decided to come, we have to cover the content as you drive it, meaning what is important to you men, we need to make sure we're helping get that message out. And then the third thing is the uniqueness of the bubble. And when Mark would speak about social justice, or if I happened to bring it up, he did it more often than me. I had this choice to make. Sometimes the power of his words and the pain in his voice, I thought needed to just land on the viewer's ears and just let it sink. Or sometimes I might say something in the hopes of maybe amplifying or co-signing or whatever the case may be. So first and foremost, that was my point. Like, I have respect for what you guys have done down here and for the league's cooperation in it. I'm a believer in 2 things. The most powerful tools we have at our disposal are our vote and the way we spend the discretionary money in our lives. Right? Like, those are, if we have any, and those are powerful things. What charities do you give to? Where do you spend your time? And the third thing I would say is education is incredibly important. I'm the last of 8 children. I grew up in a very poor household. When my brothers and sisters were young, my parents struggled to put enough food on the table for their 8 children. And so education was not important in my home. Without that basketball scholarship, Danny, I've said this often, I'd be a waitress on the Jersey Shore as a low-income person in this country. I have been blessed because of the game of basketball. And so I would say vote, put your money where your mouth is, and make sure you're somehow contributing to education. Those are the causes I give to. If it's education related, I would like to help contribute, because I know in my own life, the one thing that changed my life from what could have been a distinctly different path was my basketball scholarship and the education I received at Providence College. So here, and the other thing I'd say is, Danny, and I think Mike Breen has tried to impress this upon our viewers, is the fact of the matter is NBA players have been involved in their communities for a long time. And, the moment had to be met, and it's been met with force and unity. But the fact of the matter is, you guys, by and large, have been trying to make a difference in your communities long before this. And for that too, I am thankful. And for that too, I am appreciative.
Thank you. Very, very well said. Harrison, I know you got I don't want to keep you too long, Doris.
Danny's so humble. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for 100%. A lot of things we're pushing for: education reform, police reform, a lot of things here, and everybody has on the back of their jerseys so many different things, and hopefully those things continue to stand out. We continue to use our platform. Hopefully we keep winning games as we're here, and then when we leave, hopefully guys continue to use that platform in their respective cities. But Harrison, did you
Yeah.
I don't want to keep her too long, so I don't know if you want to go into a different lane or switch over to something different.
Or we could drive this one home. Doris, I do commend you, and I listened to when you and Mark are doing the game. There's a nice balance, an entertaining balance that you guys have found between talking about social justice and still covering the game. So I commend you for that. And you mentioned Mike Breen. And so now that as we're getting ready to go here, so Mike Breen says bang, or when Luka Doncic is hitting a step back, he says double bang. And Mark Jackson says hand down, man down. Now,
mama, there goes that man.
Mama, there goes that man. So Mark Jones, even though I haven't met him, I have met his brother's in Toronto. So he's been friendly with him.
Great Jones.
Paul Jones, shout out to Paul Jones. So it was January of last year. It was a game at Scotiabank Arena. And the Raptors were playing the Blazers. And after Danny hit a three, I think it was over CJ McCollum. And this has to be one of the highlights of our podcast. Mark Jones goes, Danny Green, as we're going into break, Mark Jones goes, Danny Green says, meet me inside the green room. Commercial. It was great. I pumped my fist. I was so happy. Danny, obviously you were playing. You didn't get to hear it. Did you know about that, Danny?
I seen the highlight afterwards. It was a huge shout out from Breen. I loved it. He usually says I usually get the Tar Heel triple for most of the time. But he said inside
there you go.
It was a good one.
So Danny, Doris is calling the finals, and obviously she's been calling games. So while you have her here now, if you make it to the finals, you might as well make a plea or a request. Let's say maybe you have to do something spectacular, like 5 threes in a quarter. But if you want to shoot your shot, this is your time to get to sneak in a promo in a big time game, bro.
I'm simple, man. I'm easy. I don't need anything spectacular or anything like that.
Just something subtle.
Well,
just something subtle.
Like if you hit
8 threes, you might.
If I hit 8 threes, I would like to bring it back to try to keep it back to the what's important, the bigger picture, and everybody's what they have on their jerseys and what's on my jersey is how many more. We could bring it to that. We could bring it to something else. I'd rather keep it. Back to the social injustice platform if we can, if I may. I haven't thought of anything specific yet, but if there's something I can think of that can, remind people of that picture or what we're still pushing for, and those people's names, I'll come up with something. But right now, I don't have anything.
That's the right answer. That's the right answer.
Listen, I'm 54. I'm sitting here smiling that he wants to go back to something far more important than basketball.
Basketball's basketball end of the day, but that's definitely
right. Like those 48 minutes are important and the most important 48 minutes. But obviously, there. And I have to say, I am normally a glass half full, super positive. Both of my children have said to me recently, Mom, we feel like something's weighing on your spirit or just sort of like heavier about you. And, but I saw something around which I took some solace. There was a poll and I don't remember exactly who did it, but it did say that by and large, Americans, are in agreement about far more than they're in disagreement. And one of the things they talked about is Americans agree that there should be equality. And whether we're talking about in interactions with the police or economically or educationally. And I have to say, I have grasped so hard onto that poll and that piece of information. I thought, okay, if we are united, because there is nothing political, not one single sentiment about equality being political. This is a human issue, not a political issue.
Agreed. Doris, we appreciate your time. I am looking forward to hearing your call on the NBA Finals.
Me too.
Hopefully breaking down how Danny shoots a lot better when he takes a sidestep and then shoots the three, or gets what's it called, Danny? Fly-by
reload?
The fly-by reload.
Yeah.
That's right. Have you Max is nice on Twitter. Do your flyby reload.
Yeah, he's another cyber bully out there making fun of my run and how I run down the court. But he's funny. He's my guy. Great dude. Very good at impersonating people. So yeah, I've watched him plenty.
It is. It's incredible, guys. Really, this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Doris.